digital haze, looking for love in modern days. 21st Century Dating Decoded, the official Speed Mingle Podcast. Yeah, 21st Century Dating Decoded, the official Speed Mingle Podcast.
Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded, the authoritative audio journal tracking the shifting architectures of modern romance, partnership, and interpersonal economics. I am your host, Don. For the past several years, mainstream cultural analysis has focused almost exclusively on the relationship behaviors of emerging adults, specifically millennials and Generation Z. We have analyzed their digital courtship rituals, their hyper-selective paths to marriage, and their role in stabilizing national divorce rates to historic lows. However, this focus has obscured a far more profound, structurally disruptive demographic shift occurring at the opposite end of the life cycle timeline. Today we isolate a socio-demographic phenomenon that defies decades of family law precedents and upends traditional assumptions regarding marital longevity. We are witnessing an unprecedented surge in late-life marital dissolutions, a movement rightly codified by sociologists as the Great Divorce Revolution. So let's talk about the Great Demographic Divergence. To comprehend the scale of this structural reorganization, we must examine a striking demographic paradox. Over the past 3 decades, the aggregate national crude divorce rate in the United States has steadily contracted, hovering consistently between 2.3 and 2.5 dissolutions per 1,000 individuals. This stabilization is heavily driven by younger cohorts who choose delayed marital entry, prioritize economic solvency before entering legal unions, and exhibit a strong preference for long-term domestic cohabitation without legal frameworks. Yet, beneath these macro indicators lies a sharply divergent trajectory. Long-term longitudinal data compiled by the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, NCFMR, reveals that for adults aged 50 and older, the divorce rate has approximately doubled since 1990. For those aged 65 and older, the incidence has tripled. The shifting landscape of modern divorce reveals a stark generational divide. For the 25 to 39 age cohort, the statistical trajectory from 1990 to the present shows a decrease of more than 20% in divorce rates, driven largely by a trend toward highly selective and delayed entry into marriage. Consequently, their share of the national divorce pool is actively declining. In sharp contrast, the 50 to 64 age cohort has seen its divorce trajectory approximately double over the same period, currently plateauing at historic highs and commanding a substantial 36% to 40% combined share of the national divorce pool for individuals aged 50 and older. Most striking of all is the 65-plus age cohort, where the rate has tripled to become the fastest-growing segment in family court jurisdictions, reflecting an exponentially rising share of total divorces. Advanced age is no longer a structural barrier to separation. Today, mature adults account for an estimated 36% to 40% of all matrimonial dissolutions nationwide, a massive escalation from the 8% benchmark recorded in 1990. This disruption is deeply embedded within the unique socio-cultural footprint of the baby boomer generation. Born between 1946 and 1964, this cohort ushered in historic levels of marital volatility during their formative young adulthood in the 1970s and 1980s. Because subsequent remarriages are statistically more fragile than first-time unions, with second and third marriages collapsing at estimated rates of 60% and 73% respectively, this historical instability is compounding as they enter their senior years. Tracking data indicates that approximately 48% of gray divorces involve a second or subsequent marriage, frequently fracturing within the first decade of the new union. Nevertheless, long-term first marriages are far from insulated. Roughly 1/3 of late-life dissolutions occur among couples who have maintained their legal unions for 30 years or more. Why the triad of catalysts has become more important: longevity, autonomy, and the empty nest. Sociologists point to a fundamental evolution in the psychological contract underpinning modern matrimony to explain this late-life attrition. The historical transition from institutional marriage, which prioritized economic survival and rigid gender role specialization, to individualized marriage, has transformed relational expectations. The contemporary mature adult demands sustained personal growth, emotional reciprocity, and self-actualization within a partnership. This shift is driven by 3 primary structural catalysts. The longevity bonus. Due to pharmaceutical advancements, biometric interventions, and decreased physical labor demands, a 60-year-old individual undergoing a divorce can mathematically anticipate an additional 20 to 30 years of active, healthy life. Faced with the prospect of a quarter century or more of remaining existence, an increasing number of older adults reject the notion of tolerating emotionally stagnant, parallel lives. The empty nest realignment. The onset of empty nest syndrome frequently acts as a sharp catalyst for separation. When adult children vacate the primary residence, the logistical imperatives of child-rearing and domestic coordination dissolve. Deprived of this shared operational framework, spouses are forced to confront their core relational dynamics, often exposing deep-seated ideological incompatibilities that can no longer be mediated by parental duties. The erasure of social stigma. Mid-century paradigms that imposed severe social exile or ecclesiastical penalties for late-stage separations have been replaced by a cultural narrative that frames post-50 divorce as a courageous mechanism for personal reinvention and autonomy. Now let's look at the economics of fiscal independence. The structural mathematics governing late-life separations have been fundamentally altered by the macroeconomic evolution of female labor force participation. In preceding generations, systemic financial disenfranchisement served as an absolute structural barrier, effectively trapping women within dysfunctional or adversarial marriages due to a lack of independent capital or credit access. However, women of the baby boomer and early Generation X cohorts entered higher education and the formal labor market at unprecedented rates. Armed with independent career trajectories, distinct salary histories, individualized retirement portfolios, such as 401k and 403b structures, and direct, non-derivative Social Security entitlements, modern mature women possess unprecedented fiscal self-sufficiency. This structural empowerment allows them to exit unviable marriages without facing immediate destitution. Empirical sociological studies confirm that women act as the primary structural initiators in the absolute majority of gray divorce filings. Conversely, macroeconomic adjustments and divergent fiscal paths within households frequently act as primary mechanisms of marital friction. As retirement horizons approach, long-simmering tensions regarding capital allocation, investment risk tolerances, and post-employment lifestyle expectations reach a critical mass. The realization that one spouse intends to execute a wealth preservation strategy anchored in frugality, while the other intends to engage in aggressive capital deployment for travel, entrepreneurship, or real estate acquisition, frequently exposes irreconcilable differences, destabilizing the remainder of the marriage. What about the wealth destruction of late-stage asset division? While gray divorce is frequently celebrated within popular psychological discourse as an achievement of personal liberation, forensic accountants, estate planning attorneys, and actuarial analysts issue stark warnings regarding its severe, often irreversible economic consequences. The financial mechanics of dissolving a marriage at age 30 differ fundamentally from undergoing the same procedure at age 60. A young adult possesses decades of peak earning capacity to rebuild depleted retirement assets, absorb real estate transaction costs, and maximize the compounding effects of long-term market investments. A senior divorcee, by contrast, faces a truncated timeline that offers virtually zero opportunity to recover from asset liquidation or outpace macroeconomic inflation prior to transitioning onto a fixed retirement income. Data compiled by public health and economic institutions, including the National Library of Medicine, illustrates a steep, highly asymmetric financial penalty in late-life separations. Following a gray divorce, women experience an average 45% decline in their standard of living, whereas men witness a 21% contraction. This pronounced gender disparity is primarily attributable to historical career interruptions for unpaid caregiving, structural wage differentials accumulated over decades, and lower aggregate lifetime retirement savings. Consequently, family law experts classify the complex asset division mechanism specific to gray divorce into three primary high-stakes battlegrounds: corporate pensions and mature retirement portfolios, dividing mature 401k portfolios, traditional/Roth IRAs, and defined benefit corporate pensions, requires navigating complex federal frameworks. Couples must secure a meticulously drafted Qualified Domestic Relations Order, QDRO, to split corporate retirement plans without inadvertently triggering massive early withdrawal penalties or immediate, non-mitigated income tax liabilities. Failing to properly draft or execute these legal instruments can result in the permanent forfeiture of vital survivor benefits, corporate matching funds, and lifetime annuity streams. The matrimonial home and illiquid equity. The primary marital residence frequently represents an older couple's largest single source of illiquid net worth. In a gray divorce, determining the disposition of this asset is fraught with macroeconomic complexity, with prevailing mortgage interest rates tracking significantly higher than the historic lows of the prior decade. Refinancing the property to allow one spouse to buy out the equity of the other has become prohibitively expensive for a fixed income or near-retirement budget. As a direct consequence, many older couples are legally compelled to liquidate the family home. This forces both parties to simultaneously re-enter a highly competitive, high-cost real estate purchasing and rental market, permanently escalating their baseline living expenses. Healthcare bridging and insurance vulnerabilities. For individuals executing a divorce prior to attaining the age of 65, The sudden termination of a spouse's employer-sponsored group health insurance policy presents an existential financial risk. Navigating the chronological gap between the entry of a divorce decree and eligibility for federal Medicare benefits requires costly, temporary solutions, such as COBRA continuation coverage or purchasing individual private health policies on public health insurance exchanges. The high premiums and out-of-pocket deductibles associated with these bridging mechanisms can rapidly decimate remaining liquid capital reserves. It is just not the baby bookers that are affected by the gray divorce revolution, but Generation X is on the horizon. As the vanguard of Generation X moves definitively through their late 50s and early 60s, sociologists and demographers are closely monitoring whether this cohort will accelerate, sustain, or actively reverse the gray divorce momentum. Early empirical indicators reveal a highly complex behavioral and stress profile. On one hand, Generation X approached marital entry with significantly higher selectivity, higher average educational profiles, and at later chronological ages than their baby boomer predecessors, factors that historically correlate with robust relational durability. On the other hand, Generation X is currently caught within the acute structural pressures of the sandwich generation crisis. This phenomenon requires individuals to simultaneously provide prolonged financial and emotional subsidization to emerging adult children who face independent macroeconomic headwinds while managing the intensive, logistically complex care of aging, frail parents. This dual-front caregiving dynamic introduces extreme psychological, emotional, and financial strain into the marital unit. The resulting systemic exhaustion and allocation disputes create volatile household stressors that may very well feed the gray divorce pipeline for the next decade. What about the mature dating economy? Ultimately, while the broader national narrative celebrates a generation of younger Americans who are successfully preserving the structural longevity of their marriages, the operational reality for older populations reflects an entirely different societal paradigm. For a substantial and growing segment of the aging population, the golden years are no longer defined by traditional notions of shared endurance, but by the highly complex, economically disruptive, and deeply personal pursuit of starting over alone. Yet, this massive influx of vibrant, tech-savvy older singles is completely transforming the dating pool. This demographic re-entry has catalyzed a highly sophisticated, mature dating economy characterized by unique relationship structures, such as living apart together, LAT arrangements, where couples maintain committed romantic bonds while preserving separate households to safeguard their independent estate plans and lifestyles. Mature participants bring an unprecedented level of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, financial clarity, and zero tolerance for superficial games to the matching environment. They demonstrate that true connection isn't about enduring a stagnant legacy routine. It is about choosing compatibility, joy, and growth, regardless of where one stands on the lifespan timeline. If you currently find yourself at a strategic crossroads, whether navigating a late-life transition, supporting a parent through this restructuring, or re-entering the dating market to reclaim your autonomy, recognize that prioritizing your long-term well-being is an act of profound strategic courage. As C.S. Lewis aptly observed, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. Pour yourself something smooth, protect your assets, and approach the modern dating landscape with defined purpose." Speed Mingle is strategically positioned to deliver an efficient frontier for contemporary dating. Our platform offers a proprietary suite of engagement tools designed to mitigate risk and optimize authentic connections, moving users past superficial interactions toward substantive relationships. We currently optimize digital and physical networking through 6 distinct, intentional modalities. Speed Mingle Anywhere facilitates secure, face-to-face virtual interactions from the user's preferred environment, eliminating the inefficiencies of anonymous digital profiles. Speed Mingle Social features curated, non-hosted weekly networking events at premier local venues to foster spontaneous connection. Speed Mingle Happenings, high-engagement, activity-based events structured to facilitate natural rapport without the constraints of traditional small talk. Speed Mingle Neighbors, designed to transform residential proximity into community engagement. This modality utilizes high-energy social event structures to build vibrant local networks and friendships within residential complexes or neighborhoods, prioritizing community building over romance. Speed Mingle B2B, a high-efficiency networking framework engineered for time-conscious professionals. Utilizing a structured round-robin format, this modality eliminates unproductive interactions to maximize professional network expansion within a single session. Speed Mingle One-to-One, launching summer 2026, offers bespoke, low-pressure introductions with vetted local singles based on algorithmic compatibility and shared core interests. Our corporate philosophy is to provide diverse asset classes for interpersonal connection, preventing users from concentrating their emotional capital into a single methodology. Whether you require the efficiency of our premium digital platform, a curated event, a personalized introduction, or an informal social gathering, Speed Mingle delivers a tailored strategy for every relational objective. A successful relationship portfolio is built upon rigorous intentionality and authentic alignment. Access the 21st Century Dating Decoded podcast via major favorite podcast networks like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, or Deezer. As well, you can view on video on YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, search Speed Mingle TV Network, or via the HRB TV network, our parent corporation's dedicated broadcast channel. Ensure uninterrupted access to our research and future content segments by registering directly at 21stcenturydatingdecoded.com. If you valued today's analysis on modern dating paradigms, please execute the following directives. Subscribe to the broadcast channel immediately. Leave a 5-star review to enhance our visibility metrics across streaming algorithms. Forward this content to an associate whose digital profile utilizes obsolete or overly filtered photography to assist in upgrading their market presentation. Additionally, we invite you to secure registration for an upcoming Speed Mingle event in your metropolitan area to actively optimize your social portfolio. Thank you for your continued listenership. Remain analytical, protect your assets, and date with defined purpose.
Thank you for listening
and watching on the new Speed Mingle TV network.